the Rockville Center Board of Education, please rise for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please note there are emergency exits on either side. And Mr. Gavin, Superintendent's report.
Thank you, Madam President. As you know, we have two items for information tonight, which is the high school data report. We also have special education program recommendations tonight for grades 6 through 12. But before we get to that, I just want to say congrats to all of our playoff teams on great seasons. Our girls cross country were 5th in the state. Well done. I also wanted to say thank you to the middle school for their middle school review. It was a wonderful show. I got a chance to attend and see all of our students singing and dancing. And I'm looking forward to seeing the high school production Clue, which starts tomorrow. So I'll be going to that tomorrow night to find out who did it. My guess is it's Mr. Mustard in the corner with a candlestick. I also was so happy to see all the work that some of our schools have done to celebrate Veterans Day. The middle school inviting veterans to come and share their experience with students is perhaps the most real example of this. They did an unbelievable job. So kudos to Ms. McGinn for getting that all off the ground and for giving our students an understanding of what it is to serve our country. I also wanted to point out that Watson did their Field of Flags that you can see on Lakeview now if you go past. That's a great start. I think next year I want to try to expand that out and do it on each of our buildings. Again, it's all about service. Today I attended Challenge Day at the middle school as well, so it seemed very middle school centric this time, but they had a lot of stuff going on. Challenge Day is a great way for students to get to understand common bonds between people. So just because you walk past somebody in the hallway, you don't always know the true story of it. So they use the idea of an iceberg that we only see 10% of people. We don't really know the 90% of people that goes on beneath that. The facilitators did a great job. Our teachers really did a great job. And the students give you real information. And it reminded me why my favorite job ever was middle school principal, because they are fun. I met with the Chamber of Commerce last week. It was a really, just as a way to introduce myself, and as a result, just off of that one meeting, we already have some of our DECA students that are going to start working for local businesses, specifically with the idea of helping the businesses we're interested in expanding, social media marketing. And our students, our DECA students, know social media marketing, I can tell you that. So we already have 2 businesses that are interested. I have a meeting set up next week with Mr. English to make sure we can finalize that. That's going to be a nice opportunity for our students to make a real-world impact on a business right here in the community. I also attended the Nassau-Suffolk Offshore Wind Energy Exposition, which is a big push by New York State to expand basically offshore wind in one of the fields is in the Sound. One of the fields would be in the Atlantic Ocean off the South Shore. But they have a curriculum that I think is very interesting for the secondary level, middle school and up. That it's the strands of a curriculum, but they don't know how to use it yet. So I'm looking forward to setting up some follow-up meetings with that. I think it could offer our students some possibility for two different things. If you're interested in engineering, there's a really big track for engineering with that. But then there's also the piece for technician, which I thought was very interesting. They are pitching that Long Island will see at least 10,000 jobs off of these wind farms, and they are $100,000 a year jobs, and not every one of them requires a 4-year degree. So options for kids, I think it was really good to hear that, and I'm looking forward to it. It's definitely a push by the state. They're interested in working with local districts, and it was a really good thing to attend. I do want to shout out our own congratulations to our own Dr. Hood, who will be representing Rockville Center on the New York State Department of Education Committee for Assessment Design. So Dr. Hood, would you just quickly, I know you didn't want me to call you out, but I'm going to call you out anyway. Would you just quickly tell us give us a little description about some of the work that we're doing?
Sonia, the mic. Sorry.
Yeah, you have to go to the mic, Sonia. I know that's why you're mad. I know.
So we can all hear you.
Okay.
Thanks.
So good evening, everyone. The plan, it's called Professional or Project-Based Learning Assessment and Advisory Network. So it's a compilation of educators across New York State, and I really give kudos to New York State for taking on this initiative. And oftentimes practitioners don't have a voice in any new initiative that comes out. So I'm excited about the initiative. But basically, it's exploring alternate assessments to the regents. That's been a long time debate, so finally, we're really seriously looking at it. So the work group that has been established will be working until 2024. We're looking at different performance models, looking at evidence-based assessments that are rooted in authenticity. Basically, we're looking at learning experiences in the classroom and across districts that are culturally responsive, and authenticity, that's the hot button word right now. So it makes sense to parallel that with assessments that are rooted in authenticity. So I'm excited to represent RVC, and I look forward to good work. This is good work that practitioners look forward to. So yeah, we'll keep you updated.
Great.
Thank you.
And there's a very practical benefit for having somebody that's part of the committee, in that you can kind of hear which way the wind's blowing a little bit earlier than most people, and that also helps us with curriculum design, right? So if we know that the state is bent on there will be no regents in this particular subject, and there might be a performance-based assessment or some sort of design-based assessment, we know we can build curriculum to that and have a kind of jump and think about it thoughtfully as opposed to reactively. So thank you, Dr. Hood. I do want to also, where the another thing with New York State is that they are by next year mandating that everyone do their 3 to 8 testing on the computer. So I kick it over to Dr. Moriarty to talk a little bit about computer-based testing and our plan for this year.
Thank you. So in light of the fact that we will be needing to move toward computer-based testing, we have been working diligently with the principals of the buildings in order to be able to carve out a plan and a pathway for us to start using it and utilizing it this school year. Sonia has helped us partner with BOCES, and they came in, they have done an initial training with us. Technology was there to make sure that our Chromebooks are up to date with the latest operating system in order for it to be compatible with computer-based testing. Our learners already take computer-based testing with NWEA 3 times a year, so we are pretty confident that they already are well-versed in how to manipulate math tools and reading passages on the computer. We will give them some more run-throughs with that just to make sure that they're extra prepared. And we have a timeline set up, and we're looking forward to moving in this direction. And since we are one-to-one Chromebook school, this should be a school district, it should be a very easy transition for us. And this is nothing that Matt and I have not done in our former district before, so it went smoothly for us there. And we're confident that we'll be able to make that come to be here.
I also, I don't know how many people saw the wellness video that was tweeted out, the first wellness video. So I asked Ms. Love to talk a little bit about the series of wellness videos that are coming.
So we have to thank our wonderful elementary counselors, Ms. Denise Cabas and Alyssa Brenner, for doing such a beautiful job on the video, with, of course, help from Ms. Reed, who's working with us in district office. So this video there'll be a series of videos throughout the school year that will go out to all community members. And the topics for the videos are based on a survey that we conducted with our Mental Health Consortium, which is a combination of staff, parents, board members, PTA representatives from each building. And some of the topics that were most popular were topics like working on executive functioning with our children, how to handle anxiety, finding peace with imperfection. Your children want to be all things, but we have to celebrate our strengths and find ways to work on the areas that might be difficult for us, and finding positive mindset. So those are some of the topics. There'll be others, but they'll be broken out through the school year. There'll be guests in each video doing a little cameo, whether it be parents or staff members, maybe board members, introducing our topics and educating our community. And so that's an initiative we're working on with the Mental Health Consortium, and which will end with the year-end wellness walk here on our school campus. We're also, as you participate in the walk, there'll be informational kiosks set up, again, with the point of it would be to educate us, to celebrate being together, being outside, and that will be the year-end culminating activity for our committee.
Thank you, Ms. Love. And as we, by the way, that was a shameless plug for all of you to be in a bit the next one of the videos, so. Yeah. With leadership comes responsibility, Ms. Barry. So before I introduce the team from the high school to take us through the high school data report, I just want to wish our entire community a healthy and happy Thanksgiving. I'm extraordinarily thankful to be part of this community, working with the board and our administrative team, our outstanding teachers, teacher assistants, aides, security guards, clerical staff, custodial staff, our nurses, and of course, our students continue to amaze us every day. So happy Thanksgiving for all of us, and happy Thanksgiving to the community. And now I'll ask Dr. Walsh in the high school to come up and lead us through the data presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Gavin. Appreciate it. Good evening, everybody. My name is Patrick Walsh. I'm the high school principal at Southside High School. Very excited to be here tonight. As a first-year principal, it's my first opportunity to come and give a presentation like this to the board, to our central administration, and our community. And I'm really excited to be here, so I really appreciate you inviting me and giving me a chance to tell our Southside story, which I really appreciate. So I felt it was important to include on the opening page a quote that we used at our October 6th professional development session with our faculty. The quote was, "Be better than you were yesterday, and be better tomorrow than you were today." And the rationale behind that quote and that theme for our day as a faculty was that we use data analysis to consistently get better as a group. We use data analysis to find strengths in our programs and in our teaching strategies and pedagogy, but we also use it to find areas in which we can be better. And so I wanted to make sure that that was expressly clear to our faculty, that we use data analysis as a tool for improvement. So I felt it was important for me to share that with you, just so you had a little insight as to where our faculty has been and where we are going and where we plan to be, so that this gives a little more context to our presentation tonight. I wanted to start with the mission of the Rockville Center School District because it is so paramount to the work that we do day in and day out, and it's lived within our building. So I wanted to put that there as a starting point. This image also was shared with our faculty at our opening superintendent's conference day, one of the first days of school. I'd say probably my favorite part of being the building principal here at Southside High School is seeing all the different groups come together for a common purpose. And we have so many different groups in our building that all have very different jobs. You go around seeing people do very different things. But at the end of the day, we're all pulling towards one common goal. And that common goal is to enhance the learning experience for our students. And I find that really cool, and I find that really amazing. And again, like I said, it's probably my favorite part of being principal of this building. And I can tell you for sure that that is the driving force behind what we do in this building. I would also be remiss if I didn't share that, while we're going to cover a lot of data tonight, metrics, statistics, which are all very important for us to look at, I would be remiss if I didn't share how important the social-emotional well-being of our students are on a day-to-day basis. It is a constant conversation when we go about our business at school to make sure that our kids are not only supported academically, but have the social-emotional skills and support to be successful. If we've learned anything over the last couple of years, it's that social-emotional learning and academic performance go hand in hand. They're not isolate, they're not discrete factors. And we try to make it a point to make sure that kids are feeling supported, feeling safe, feeling secure, feeling encouraged, so that they can give us their absolute best from an academic standpoint. So I would like to thank all of our support staff in our building for their commitment to that each and every day. So I'd like to just give a brief primer on the Regents exams for diploma types that we have here at the high school, the difference between the two that I'm going to be talking about on the next slide. First, the Regents diploma students can earn by achieving a passing score on 1 math Regents, 1 science Regents, the English Regents, 1 social studies Regents, and then 1 pathway. And that pathway is most common, a second social studies, but it can be a math, it can be a science, it can be for those students who are interested in vocational education through BOCES or career and technical education. The point being that kids have options, and they work with their counselor to determine the best way forward based on their interests, their desires, and their strengths. The Advanced Regents Diploma is another one that's worth exploring. In order to achieve the Advanced Regents Diploma, students are required to pass 3 mathematics exams, 2 science exams, the English exam, 1 social studies Regents exam, the 1 pathway that was mentioned in the previous diploma, and then in addition to that, one of the following, either pathway through world language, 5-credit sequence in the arts, and a 5-unit sequence in CTE. So I just wanted to give a little background on those diplomas because we are going to be talking about the rates in which our students achieved each of those. So last year here at Southside High School, 99% of our students earned a Regents diploma. As you can see, the last years prior offer very consistent and similar patterns of 98%, 98%, and 97%. Last year for the Advanced Regents diploma, the rate was 90%, which is a mark that we are truly proud of. And as you can see, this was not a one-year thing. Over the last 3 years, our Regents with Advanced designation rate has been high as well, 93%, 84%, and 89%. Just to provide some context, Nassau County, the Regents with Advanced designation rates for those 3 years listed are as such: 68%, 63%, and 59%, which is a really true testament to the work that our faculty and our amazing students do each and every day. And so this is really this signals to us that our students are taking the most challenging courses that we have to offer here, and they're also achieving success on that, which is something that we're really proud of. I also just wanted to point out too, our students at the Greenhouse, which is our alternative school, have also seen similar success. 13 of 14 students last year in the program graduated, 12 of which earned a Regents diploma and 1 of which earned an Advanced Regents designation, which again is something that we're truly proud of. So this table here showcases our June 2022 Regents exam results. So on the left-hand side, it's the breakdown by levels. I'm going to start by focusing the attention on the passing rate column, which shows the percentage of students in our building who earned a score of 65 or above on that given exam last June. The column directly to the right is the regional gap, which again, for comparison purposes is useful. It gives us a little context to how our kids are performing relative to the region. So a positive gap would indicate that we scored higher than the region by a certain number of percentage points, and a negative gap would show that we scored below the region. So as you can see, in all of our subject areas, we scored above the region. The 2 lone exceptions are Algebra 1 and Earth Science. And as you know, in this district, our students take Algebra 1 and Earth Science in 8th grade. So the sample size in those particular classes, in our algebra class last year, we had 20 students. And in Earth Science, we only had 6 students. But the other subjects, as you can see, were above the county. So I would also point to geometry. As you can see, the passing rate in geometry was 69%, which was 3 points higher than the county, which indicates a county average of 66%. So geometry is certainly a topic that a subject area that we're exploring and ways in which we can get more kids through. Clearly, across the board in Nassau County, that is a topic or a course that is of note. So some things that I would just share that I would like to just have known. Our geometry teachers and math department, as soon as those results came, got right to work talking about ways in which we could modify and do things differently to make sure that course was accessible as possible for our students. This year, they've implemented a new program called Delta Math. They've recognized the need for additional support and resources for those students. They're attending trainings to get the department up to speed on how to incorporate that. It's a great formative assessment tool, which allows our teachers in those classes to assess kids ongoing so that we can make adjustments to their learning throughout the course of the year rather than waiting maybe towards the end of the school year. So we're very excited to see what comes out of that because I know it is an area of focus and I know it's something that we want to continue to improve towards. Of note too, our students who are taking algebra and earth science, again, we're happy to report that we have small class sizes so we can give individualized instruction to those students who are trying to get through and trying to have success with the algebra and earth science curriculum. So we very much look forward to the different strategies that are used to help those learners as well. The final column on the right indicates the mastery rate, and mastery rate is earned by scoring an 85 or above on the given exam. So similarly to the passing, we provided the regional gap, which again shows the difference between our students' mastery rate and the county mastery rate. So again, as you can see here, as a comparative tool, where our students perform as it relates to scoring that 85 or above, the results are as shown. I think it's important to note too, just one of the exams is missing from this column, this table. The United States History Regents exam, for a variety of reasons through the pandemic and then through last year, has not been offered since 2019. So there was nothing to include there, but I just wanted to mention it just so you know why the reason for its absence. I think when we look at data, it's important not to focus solely on one year in isolation. It's good to get 3 years' worth of data to try to establish some kind of trend. So this slide here just gives us a comparison, that same passing gap that we saw on the previous slide, over the last 3 years. Now, obviously, we excluded the time frame during COVID where there were cancellations and exemptions for Regents exams. So the last 3 years we looked at where Regents exams were given in a normal fashion. So as you can see, even a subject like algebra, which we noted, an area that was below the county, is showing signs of positive trend, which we're very excited about. And then for the most part, as you can see, the other subject areas consistently performing above the county. So this slide here is provided by the Nassau BOCES Data Warehouse, and it's a summary for elective exams. So what they mean by elective exams is Regents exams that are not required for the Regents diploma. So in other words, students opt into these courses. They're not mandatory in order for them to earn a Regents diploma. So when we talk about passing rates, those are certainly important, but passing rates only tell part of the story. So when we talk about these elective exams, it's also important to know what percentage of our students are actually taking these exams and how well are they doing on these exams itself. So I'm going to use Algebra 2 just as a frame of reference. So as you can see, like we talked about on previous slides, 86% of our students earned a passing score in that exam, which is in the column percent passing. Comparatively speaking, Nassau County on the right had a passing percentage of 81%. Okay, that's great, and we're happy that we're above the county, but is there more to this story? So they use what's called the average grade enrollment between grades 10 and 12 to get an estimate of what percentage of your students are actually taking this exam. So for Southside High School, our average grade enrollment was 260 students. So we had, and they use this as an estimate, it's not a perfect estimator, but it gives us some context. We had 265 students take that exam, so when we use 260 as our average grade enrollment, we get a percent of 102% of students taking the exam. Now, what that really tells us is that virtually every student in our building is taking Algebra 2. When you compare that to the county, when they use the same metric in that same column on the right, only 75% of the students eligible for Algebra 2 in Nassau County actually sit for the exam. Now, what that means is that instead of taking Algebra 2, they're taking maybe a Fundamentals of Math or some other different math elective. So what we're proud of is that our students are taking that course, the most challenging course that we have to offer at the given time. And the next question is, well, how are they doing, right? So it's one thing to offer the course to them, but the question is, well, are they having success in it? So that's where the final column comes in, and it really is a combination of the passing rate and the participation rate coming together. So what percent of your average grade enrollment who are eligible to sit for this exam actually pass it and have success on it? So for Southside High School, that number was 88%. And for the county, the percentage of eligible students who are able to sit for that exam and actually pass it is 60%. So I think what you can see here with this, using Algebra 2 as the example, is that our students are being challenged to take these rigorous courses, and they're also meeting success. I would just point to geometry because I did mention it so much in the slide before. Last year we had a historically low count in our current 10th grade cohort, last year's 9th graders. We had 217 students in that class. So to use 260 as the average grade enrollment was a little misleading. So we felt it was important to put, and we did that in parentheses in the top row there, what the actual participation rate was for geometry. So 205 students out of 217, our actual participation rate was 94.5%. Again, almost all of our students taking geometry. And then that same metric used for the average percent of the enrollment who passed the exam, again, a much more indicative feature, 65%, again, compared to the county of 55%. So again, points of pride, points of opportunities for us to celebrate are the fact that we have so many students that are taking these courses and meeting success with it. And you can see similar numbers down the line for chemistry as well. So you might be saying, well, Dr. Walsh, why is it important that my child takes Algebra 2? Why does that matter? So Algebra 2 is a really important benchmark for college and career readiness. And I'm going to split those into two different pieces. Certainly for our college-bound students, that this is an indicator that they are on track and on a good pace to be able to have success when they leave us here at Southside. It's a good marker for that regard. Even for our students who do not plan to go to college, who plan to enter the workforce or vocational trade, we're finding more and more the advanced skills that are needed to be successful in those areas are highlighted by a lot of the traits that cause students to be successful in courses like Algebra 2. So this is why we encourage so many of our students to stick with it and work with their teachers and work hard to try to get through these courses with the appropriate supports. And we're happy to see that students have been able to do so here at the high school. In the 12th grade year, for the most part, our students have the opportunity to sit in AP Calculus courses and statistics. So we do offer AP Math here at the high school. Again, AP Calculus AB, AP Calculus BC, and then AP Statistics. So we took a look at the last time we had an uninterrupted assessment season in 2018, 2019, and we wanted to look at the number or the percentage of students that earned a 3, 4, or 5 on these exams. Now, we chose those because AP exams are scored on a 1 to 5 scale. And a student's earning a 3, 4, or 5 show good indication that they're, as a result of their time in the course, are ready to advance with the college-level coursework that goes along with an AP course. So as you can see, our performance back in 2018, 2019 is such. We're proud to report that there have been increases in the percentage of students earning 3, 4s, and 5s in Calc AB, Calc BC, and AP Statistics. Now, I think it's important to note that there's a glaring difference between 18, 19, and 2021 in one particular area. Earlier in 2018, 2019, we had 132 students who were taking Calc AB, and now we only have 38 students. So there are some reasons for that. One in which being the largest is the fact that we 2 years ago implemented a 2-year math sequence in the IB program. So IB Math Applications is a 2-year math program that students take that contains students who otherwise would have enrolled in Calc AB as a senior. So that's the reason for the drop-off in the students taking Calc AB. Students in Calc BC, those numbers have remained steady. So last school year, we had 44 students sit for that exam. In years prior, 37, and the year before that, 44. So at this time, I would like to welcome our assistant principal and IB coordinator, Ms. Liz Nisler-Cross, up to the podium.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for inviting us to share and celebrate our students' results with you and the community. Beginning in 11th grade and continuing into 12th grade, the vast majority of our students choose to participate in the globally recognized and highly regarded International Baccalaureate or IB program. These include junior and senior full diploma candidates, as well as course candidates who are taking individual courses of their liking. Last year, we had 436 juniors and seniors participate in the IB program. In the senior year, we had 109 diploma candidates, 96 of which earned the IB diploma. That's a success rate of 88%. That's the highest success rate by far in our school's history. You know those emojis where like the head's exploding? That's this. So if you want, though, to be extra wowed, I did look at the May 2020 or 2022 global success rate, and it was 86.11. So we actually exceeded the global success rate. Now, let me explain why that's huge. The IB program across the globe, schools often gate the program. So maybe you need a certain GPA, or you need recommendations in order to be accepted into the program. We have open doors, open opportunity for any 11th or 12th graders who are interested. So because we believe in the program and we believe in our students. So if we come near the global average, we're pleased. The fact that we exceeded it this year has us absolutely bursting with pride in our students, in our teachers, in our staff. Ultimately, 36% of the graduating class last year earned the IB diploma, meaning that they left here with an additional highly valued credential, something in addition to their Regents or Advanced Regents diploma. And that's on par with the previous year where we had 37%. Now, interestingly, someone pointed out to me recently that maybe I shouldn't be so matter-of-fact in saying that. Because you'd be hard-pressed to find a public school with open access anywhere that would use percentage of a graduating class earning the IB diploma as a metric. Other programs just don't come close to our number or this level of success. So thank you so much to the Board of Ed, to district and building leadership, and to our staff for making magic happen here with all the opportunities provided to our students. Now, we do continue to have high expectations for this year's cohort of IB students, but I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that the diploma candidate numbers did go down a bit with our current seniors. It's important to remember that they were freshmen at the start of the pandemic, and the majority of their high school experience has been taking place, during pretty turbulent times. So it's not really surprising that some of them have chosen to step away from doing the full diploma. In fact, I recently participated in a regional IB conference of coordinators in schools, and I found that it was pretty common amongst schools locally and globally that numbers had dipped in at least 1 year. Happily, in contrast, our juniors have chosen to participate at a rate that is more in keeping with our usual participation levels, so we seem to have rebounded. And Dr. Walsh will be pointing to one possible reason for that later on when he discusses our action steps. So I've been mentioning diploma candidates a lot. So to offer some clarification for anyone who might not know what that actually means, the slide here shows what the full IB diploma entails. So students take 3 higher level and 3 standard level courses from each of the 6 core curricular groups to the right. Now, the difference between higher level and standard level is really one that's more about time, not so much about difficulty. So higher level courses are always 2 years in length, whereas standard level courses can be 1 year, but sometimes 2 years, depending on what best fits the needs of students. Each subject or course is graded on a scale of 1 to 7, and that's based on multiple assessments, which I think is one of the strengths of the program. So for instance, in IB English, students do an individual oral, they write an HL essay, and then they sit 2 exams in May of their senior year. Those 4 major assessments combine to earn them a score on a 1 to 7 scale. 4 is generally considered satisfactory knowledge and understanding. So the minimum requirement for the IB diploma is 24 points. That's the 6 classes times the 4, equaling 24. So note that students ultimately, they could get 42 points if they got 7s in every class. Plus, they are eligible to receive 3 bonus points through the central elements. The central elements are a requirement for the diploma, and they're theory of knowledge, a fabulous class that the students take senior year, the extended essay, which is a lengthy research paper that students write. They pick a topic of personal interest that they're choosing. They work under a faculty mentor during the 2 years. And then the third central element is CAS, where on a quarterly basis, they're writing reflections about experiences they have outside of the building related to creativity, activity, and service. Now, these are called central elements because they're meant to inform and be informed by all of the classes and the experiences, the extracurricular experiences that our students have. So, getting to our results, these are the higher level subject results. You can see that the May 2022 subject averages for Southside and the Globe are both in bold. As a point of comparison, I included the averages from 2019, since that was the last year pre-pandemic that our students completed all assessments and sat exams. I do want to note that an exact comparison isn't possible because last year, in light of the pandemic and the notion of potential learning loss, social emotional needs of students, the IB astutely and compassionately decided to streamline curriculum and assessments. So for instance, I mentioned the 4 assessments in English earlier. Last year, they removed the second May exam. They removed paper 2. In the sciences, in any of the sciences, they removed paper 3 as well as the group 4 project, which is completed as part of the coursework. So from this table, you can see that our subject average went up in every single higher level course, sometimes markedly so. For instance, in history, biology, physics, film, and theater. You might notice that the global average went up as well. in all of those subjects. Does that minimize our success? Not at all, because if you look at the last column, we calculated our percentage growth in comparison to the global average percentage growth. And we clearly outpaced the global growth in all subjects, with the exception of business. Now, we were scratching our heads over this. We're like, is it because there are so many students in business and they're at different achievement levels? But that really didn't seem to be the case. Instead, in looking at it, we realized, the results in business have been pretty strong since we started. So they might not have had as much room for growth as other subjects, which honestly, not the worst problem to have. Here are our IB standard level subjects. Again, the 2022 Southside High School averages and the global averages are in bold. May 2019 is used as a point in comparison. And again, you can see in many of our subjects, our averages did increase, again, sometimes significantly so. For instance, in psychology, physics SL, math analysis, music. And again, we often outpaced the global average. There are some exceptions in Spanish by a small amount, and math applications. Now, if you notice the asterisks next to some subjects, that indicates that last year was the first year of testing in a newly revised course. So the IB is a very reflective organization. They do self-assessments, they review the data, they get input from teachers and schools. And so every subject undergoes a 7-year review cycle. And it's often revised to reflect best practice and keep up with any advancements or changes in a particular subject area. So given that this was first testing, we recognize that there's a transition period to consider, but at the same time, we are looking at the data we've already begun so that we can respond accordingly in terms of instruction. Additionally, we are very happy that environmental systems made such a leap and such an increase, but at the same time, we have a goal that we'd like to crack through that 4 level. We'd like to highlight some subjects where students had exemplary results. Here you can see the percentage of students that scored a 4 or better in that course. Now, in some of these courses, they tend to be more specialized, like in music, theater, Spanish HL. So these courses have smaller numbers of students. However, I want to direct your attention to English, which is basically our most inclusive course. As I mentioned earlier, we don't gate access. So to have this level of success just reaffirms the choices that we've made and the systems that we have in place to support our students. I also want to point out, and it's not on the slide, but out of the 1,084 subject results that our juniors and seniors, course or diploma, received, 83% of the scores were 4 or higher, which means that in these subjects, students have demonstrated that they have the skills and competencies needed for success at the college level. And congratulations to all of our students and our teachers and staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nisler-Cross. I wish I was able to include a part about emojis in my part, but I wasn't able to fit it in, so, yeah.
He's working on it.
So data without action is incomplete, right? So when we look at data, the next step is, well, what do we do as a result of it? And what do we do to get better? So we've talked about a bunch of different things so far that have already been implemented at the high school, and we want to share them with you, things that are happening already. So we're very excited that we've been able to expand our support systems this year. Our homework helpers was extended to 4 p.m., which is a half-hour increase, which might seem small, but it's not. So I appreciate the support from Central and the board to allow that to happen. We have students now staying till 4 o'clock, working with teachers, working with TAs on getting support and extra resources after school. We've also expanded through a partnership with the MLK Center to provide after-school academic support there as well, too, which just really widens our scope of support for all of our students in our building, which has been really positive. I'm also looking forward to later on in the evening speaking with Ms. Love about some changes and some strengthening to our special education model so that we can continue to provide support for our students with disabilities and to have them build upon the successes that they've already demonstrated. I've also mentioned this October 6th faculty-wide professional development results analysis, which was a really great opportunity, again, for our faculty to sit down and talk about, well, what is it that our students do really well historically, and what are the areas that they need improvement on? And that was a springboard right into our Q1 common assessments that happened at each course, course by course. So what this was every grade level, every course gave a common assessment, and the purpose of that being it allowed us to have a consistent idea about how our students were performing relative to their peers. So for example, all of our Global 9 students took the same assessment in Q1, and it allowed our teachers to be able to sit down and compare apples to apples as it relates to that exam and say, well, what did my kids do well in, or what did your students perform above the grade level in? And it allows for some really important conversations about, are our students on track? Looking at Regents data, looking at IB data, AP data is all really important. The one obvious problem with that data is that we no longer have those students with the same teacher anymore. The data comes too late for us to make any changes to instruction or any of our programs. So we felt it was important here at Southside to continue stuff that we've already implemented over the last couple of years and really bolster that to make sure we make this a priority in our building, to give teachers time, whether it's through department meetings, common prep periods, to really look at the data and have conversations with their peers and their colleagues about what it is that students do really well and how we can strengthen the areas in which they need support. We also have a very systematic plan for students who are failing courses. So at the end of each quarter, a report is run that gives us insight into our students who are struggling. And at that point, we will use a team approach. An administrator, school counselor, the parent, and the student will have a meeting. And it's in this meeting where an individual plan is put in place to try to help that student. And it's different for every kid because kids are different. And what might work for one kid might be not as effective for others. So that team approach sends a really strong message. I think for the student, it says, hey, there are a lot of adults here that care about me and that are invested in my success. So that's been a real positive. It also helps us strengthen our partnership with our parents. And they get to come into the building, meet with an administrator, meet with a counselor, have the conversation with their kid in the room. And it really forges that partnership that we really value here at Southside. We can also help the parent make sure that they have all the communication that they need as it relates to their teachers, access to the parent portal so they can follow along and make sure their students are their children are staying up to date on assignments. It's been a really helpful way for us to stay on top of students who might need additional support. I'd also point out IB every 5 years has us do a self-assessment of our IB program, and we are up for that right now. Which gives us a really good opportunity to dig deep into what it is that we do with our IB program. Are there areas that need modifications, areas that need changing, areas of strength that we can build upon and replicate in other areas? And it allows us to look at our courses, which courses need revision or are due for revisement. It really gives us an opportunity to be reflective about what we do and ultimately make changes to have better outcomes and experiences for our students. So Ms. Nisler mentioned there was a part that I was going to reference. We're very proud that this year we've been able to implement the IB Diploma Research course in the building during the school day this year. It's a course that meets every other day, and it was created in response to the need to help support our students who need additional support in completing the central elements of the IB Diploma. So the extended essay, CAS assignments, TOK concepts, and we felt that it was important to build this into the school day because we didn't want students to feel like this was something extra that had to be done on the outside. We wanted to have something programmed in the course of the day that provided students time during their school day to get support from a teacher in completing some of these central elements. And our hope was that it would help prevent some of our students who otherwise would step away from the diploma to give them the confidence, to give them the skill set, and to give them the support to stay with the program. So we're very excited to see how that's been rolled out. We have close to 80 students that are enrolled in that course this year, which is, we didn't know exactly what it was going to look like this year, but it's certainly exceeded our expectations thus far. And it's a course that's under consistent conversation about how we can best serve our students. So when I tell you that, our faculty, conducted data analysis, well, what does that actually mean? So I wanted to give you just a little bit of a short rundown of some things that you might have seen or heard had you been at that professional development and those conversations that were happening among our teachers. So BOCES gives us a report that's called the GAP report that enables us to see how our students performed relative to other students in the county. And so this is taken directly from our Buildings Gap report for geometry. So the first section, there are 3 questions that were pulled, where our students, as you can see by the green coloring, had a positive gap, meaning our students performed very well on this question relative to the county. The 3 examples, 18%, 13%, and 11.7% higher than the county average. So questions that we challenged our teachers to grapple with. Why do we think our students are performing so well on these standards? What is it that's causing this? How are these topics represented in our curriculum, and what about this can we replicate possibly in other areas maybe that are in need of improvement? Similarly, and probably more importantly, do we also look at areas where our students perform below the county? So if we pull these 2 questions, you can see the standard, the question number, and how our kids did relative to the county. And these questions are so important. Why might our students struggle with these standards? Is this surprising, or did we maybe expect this based on where we were in our curriculum? Did any teachers in the department have positive gaps for these questions? Because teachers are armed with a similar report with just their students. So we could have a situation where a teacher says, no, my kids actually did really well on that, and another teacher says, well, mine didn't do so well. That conversation about how they taught that topic is invaluable. And so when we talk about the concept of a professional learning community and teachers coming together and educators coming together to get better as a faculty, these are the kind of questions and these are the kind of activities that really drive that progress. And I'm proud that that happened, and it's something that we've been emphasizing, not just a one-time thing. This will be repeated over the course of these quarterly exams, and having these questions come about repeatedly so that we can inform and change our instruction while we still have these students in our presence. So a great report too, just lastly, the wrong answer summary report gives us insight into what students chose relative to the other choices. So these are 2 questions. I found this to be fascinating. There were 2 questions on the Algebra 2 Regents exam, 2 multiple choice questions where our students basically had the same percentage of correct responses. 55.6% for the first one, 55.4% for the second question. But the story is a lot more interesting than that, and it tells a different picture. So the first question, the wrong answers were evenly distributed. 17% chose 1, 14% chose 2, 15% chose 3. If you compare that to the next question right below it, there was an overwhelming majority of students who chose choice 3. So when teachers are looking at this question and they have exam in hand and they're looking through, the wrong answers from the first question tell a very different story about their understanding than it does the second one. And so these, it's more than just right or wrong. So what we're challenging our teachers to do is really dig deep and have a real insight onto where student misconceptions are so that when we're trying to help them dig out of those holes, we at least have a guideline for where we can go to get them there the quickest way possible. So I'd just like to shift gears just a little bit, just to take some time to explain the co-seated model that we have here at the high school. So this model was introduced in 2019-2020 school year for our 11th and 12th grade English and our 11th grade history. So students, when they sit down with their counselor, they either register for the IB path or the Regents path. However, those students are seated in the same classroom. So some characteristics of the co-seated classroom that are important to note. New York State learning standards for the Regents exam and IB learning outcomes align extremely well, especially when New York State revamped the English standards to include more reading. That aligned already with where the IB learning outcomes were already. So it gave us an opportunity to be able to make sure that students were prepared through both avenues. In that classroom, there are high expectations that are set for all of our students, with modifications and scaffolds that help create the foundation for success. It also allows us to maintain heterogeneity while providing options for students who may be choosing a different pathway. So, this framework was, again, like I said, introduced in 2019-2020, right before, COVID hit, and we had a whole different kind of disruption that was unanticipated. But the model is still there, and it's still strong, and it's still based on premises of scaffolding and differentiation. Is it a work in progress? Of course it is. It's something that we're always looking to get better at, and this stuff is not easy to do. But our teachers are working diligently to try to incorporate it where they can. So some things you might see for major assignments, the differentiation. Students on the Regents pathway will be graded on a Regents scale versus on an IB rubric grading scale. There'll be varied word counts and modified major assessments. within the classroom, using different levels of Bloom taxonomy to make sure that all learners are challenged appropriately, and strategies like think alouds, graphic organizers, and breaking down assignments and allowing students choice in their text are all different ways that this model success is achieved in this model. This list is not exhaustive. It was just an opportunity for us to get on paper kind of some of the things that we're looking to see in our co-seated classroom. So I just wanted to give a little bit of breakdown. Last year in our 11th grade English class, 15% of our students opted for the 11R path, and 86% of our students registered for the IB English 11. Compare that to this year, the numbers have dropped for the number of students electing for the 11R pathway, which is 8% of our students, with the overwhelming majority of our students opting for the IB English 11. So just to give a little historical data, the last time that Southside High School had separate 11R and IB 11 courses was back in 2008, 2009, 2010, and 2010, 2011. And we wanted to take a look at that historically to see, well, how has that changed? Have there been more or less students that have registered for the 11R? And as you can see, on average, those last 3 years when there were separate classes, we averaged 68 students registering for the 11R sections. Last year, we had 33 students, and like I mentioned before, it's been a decrease even this year with only 22 students opting for the 11R option. So when we look at passing rates on the English 11R exam, on the English 11 exam, I'll point to the average column of the last 3 years, the 09 through 11. The last time, again, we had separate 11R and IB classes for the 11th grade English. Passing rates, very consistent, 93. And last year, our students that were registered for 11R had a 94% pass rate. The mastery rate is the number in the middle of the bar chart. Back again, with separate classes, the mastery rate was 35%. And last year, our students who were registered for the 11R path attained a mastery rate of 41%. So a logical question might be, well, what happens to the students who are registered for IB? How does this impact them? So as you can see, the average in 2009, 2011, 100% passing rate for those students. Similarly, as such for our students last year in the co-seated model, our mastery rate was 3 points higher. This also, being that we have more R students in the IB English than we had historically is also impressive. And I think what this tells us is that, we were able to maintain the benefits of integrated classrooms while at the same time making sure students were still achieving academically. So these are numbers that we're very proud of, and we're very happy to see, take place. So just some demographic information that we just wanted to share as it relates to our co-seated classroom. So as it's situated in the co-seated model, 6%, students with disabilities make up 6% of the overall population in our classroom of students of the co-seated. On the edges of the screen, the English 11R, when the classes were broken up, the students with disabilities were overrepresented in the 11R section, 33%, 26%, and 31%. And as you can see, very few of them enrolled in the IB English 11 section, 1%, 1%, and 2%. For economically disadvantaged students, currently in the co-seated model that we saw last year, they make up 13% of the students in the classroom. While those numbers are fairly similar on the left, 26%, 13%, and 14%, again, the last time the courses were separate, they're definitely underrepresented in the IB English 11 group, which was only 2% and 1% of 2%, the makeup of students who are economically disadvantaged in our IB course. And last but not least, the racial minority makes up 24% of the students in our co-seated classroom last year. When the courses were separate, that number jumped to 41%, 41%, and 45% in the R section. And it was underrepresented on the IB English 11 side, 15%, 11%, and 19%. So what we were able to see, again, some of the benefits of this co-seated model was that the integration of our classrooms combined with the consistent performance and achievement of our students, something that we're very proud of. So Ms. Nissler and I thought it was important for us to finish with a quote that we found that we thought summarized the work that our teachers, our faculty, our administrators, all of our support staff embody every year. And it's said by someone by the name of Rita Pearson, who is pretty well known in education. And her quote is that every child deserves a champion, an adult who will never give up on them, who understands the power of connection and insists that they become the best that they can possibly be. And I think this quote embodies a lot of the work that we do here at Southside. It's again why I'm so proud to be the principal of this building. And it will be what drives each and every one of our work day in and day out. Before we finish, we wanted to share some student voice with you as well. So this will be the last slide to take it home. And here you go.
I like individual learning, and the reason why is because it kind of forces you to essentially come up with the questions yourself. It's a lot more, I think it's a little bit more invigorating because instead of having somebody else feed the answer to you, you're getting kind of like your brain to work. But I do like the fact that at Southside, like they encourage like once you do your individual work to essentially like peer review and talk to your classmates and kind of see like where you can potentially do better or what.
I think I like hands-on learning the best, and I think I do get a lot of opportunities for that in school, to ask questions or get experience in practice, whether it's going to zero period or just in class.
Sure. My favorite thing at Southside High School is studying to read. I love my health class because we dance at the beginning and still go to journals. What we say what we are grateful for.
I would say my favorite learning experience is probably running for student government and being in it. You get to work with different students in the government. You get to meet and work with students, in the rest of the grade, as well as various staff members to make events happen.
I really enjoy in-class debates. I think learning about events in real time has allowed me to absorb the most information in class.
Yeah, we recently took a trip to the salt marsh in Oceanside. It was for environmental systems. It's a science class. I liked that experience a lot because I had a chance to interact with nature and see how different things work.
Yeah, I would say that the teachers, for the most part, it's really hard to slip through the cracks at Southside. I think that, don't get me wrong, it's very competitive, but they really try their best to make sure that everybody has a mentor or somebody that they could talk to, or just an outlet so that they know that they care. Like they care about your education and making sure that you can, whether that's like college or like a trade school or whatever, the military, whatever the case may be, that you essentially have the support to do whatever. Which is nice.
Oh, Southside is a great place to be. I love the environment. Teachers are always here to support you. I like the people that I'm around.
Yeah, I've had a really great experience over the past 4 years, and I think all the teachers and administrators are out to help every student in any way possible. Always looking for feedback, having opportunities to ask questions during zero period or just during class time.
The school is really nice. We have a lot of opportunities and a lot of clubs. And I don't know, just thank you to everyone.
Great, so that concludes our presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Walsh, Ms. Nisler. Cross, thank you. Before I turn it over to the board for some questions and comments, I just wanted to say a couple things. First, I really love and embrace the idea of data for continuous improvement. That was a theme throughout the entire presentation, that data shouldn't just be used at the end when it's over, but it's something that we need to use during the year as we're going through the year to make sure that we are making adjustments to meet the needs of individual students. So I appreciate that. I appreciate the system that the high school administration and teachers have worked together to put in place so that we make sure that we are making adjustments as needed. I thought that was great. One thing I do want to remind the board is that geometry has been a consistent theme that we've heard as an area where we need to look at. So Dr. Moriarty has already started that conversation at the middle school level as well as the high school level, and we look forward to productive and immediate responses to that particular piece. So that is definitely something that we have to work on in terms of geometry as a whole. Dr. Walsh, I just want to ask a quick question. when you go back to the Regents slide, the Regents results slide, science didn't have any level 5s. The science exam didn't have any level 5s. Would you explain why it would seem like science has no level 5s when every other exam does?
Yes, so science is the one Regents exam where students are only scored on levels 1, 2, 3, or 4. So there is no opportunity for students to score on the level 5 section there, which is why we left it as an NA, but yeah, that's why you'll see no students earning that mark. The mastery rate would be the level 4 for those science students.
Okay. The other quick comment that I had to make was the IB research course, that this is the first year that we put it into place, and we already had 80 students enroll for it. So that's unusual where you would have a first-year course like that, and it shows that there was a demand, and then there was a need that was met. Is that one of the courses that we continue to develop as it goes? Is that something that's a little bit more flexible? How does that approach?
Yeah, I think it's important for us to really take a look and see how it's performing. When it was created, it was put in as an opportunity to see how we can help kids. So we're going to continuously gather feedback from the teachers who are teaching the course, the kids who are in the course, and find ways to mold it so that it's effective for our students. So I think it's definitely something that we'll continue to monitor, continue to look at, and make it what it needs to be so that it serves the overall purpose of what it was intended to.
So my last question with that is, was that something that students came to us with? Or is that something that was feedback from teachers, or a little bit of both?
Yeah, I'm gonna ask Ms. Nisler on that
Sure.
one.
So the answer to your question is yes, all of that. It initially started with our theory of knowledge teachers really wanting to have an opportunity to work with students in their junior year, but with increased focus on social emotional needs, concern about students' mental health, the idea of trying to bring some of that outside extra work and experiences into the school day to relieve that duress seemed to be a really good idea. So we built this class to really focus on key skills: inquiry, research, the writing process. And so the teachers that are teaching the IB Diploma Research course are in close contact with the CAS coordinators, the extended essay coordinators, so that they too are coordinating and keeping up with deadlines and shifting, priorities based on what's upcoming in terms of, student schedules and deadlines.
And I know from my own children's experience at college that having that kind of support, at least initially at the high school level, is extraordinarily valuable when students attend college and that are managing it predominantly on their own. So
Right.
kudos to you guys for listening and responding.
Thank you.
Turn it over to you.
Thank you. I had some similar comments and questions, so I'll just go first and then turn it over to the board members before I close out. One of the themes certainly was ongoing real-time reflection and adaptation. Dr. Walsh, can you just expand upon your next steps in terms of the PLC sessions that you have planned for the remainder of the school year? I think you said it will be a combination of departmental subject area as well as whole group faculty sessions like you did in October?
Yeah, so as far as the data analysis goes from quarterly exams, departments are meeting through department meetings after school. They also have common prep periods as well. So there's combinations between those opportunities to be able to meet and collaborate, which we will continue throughout the year, each quarter when those major common assessments are occurring, which will be a theme. We do have more professional development that's coming down the road. In December, we are going to be doing a professional development related to meeting the needs of different learners, differentiation, that concept. So that's a great opportunity for us too, because that's very much related to a lot of this. It's how do we make sure we hit all of our students and making sure that they're getting what they need. Also, we're looking at exploring different technologies and options for which we can make this data analysis easy for teachers to get, just like we get on the Regents exam. So we already have a couple things in the works, but we're excited to explore ways in which we can expand upon that. To make those tools easy and usable for teachers is a really important component.
Thank you. And as a follow-up to Mr. Gavin's questions on the IB Diploma Research class, my question really was in terms of scheduling. I think you touched on it, Ms. Nisler, but is that every other day, both 11th grade and 12th grade, or just in 11th grade, feeding into the TOK class in senior year?
Exactly, just 11th grade.
So it's support for CAS and EE and the skills that you spoke about, preparing them for, okay, that's great. And Dr. Walsh, you mentioned the U.S. history Regents being an important missing data point, and I just want to point out too that that's a new Regents as well coming up in the first administration of that, and it's also similar skill set to the English Regents that was revamped a few years back in terms of more reading intensive and less rote memorization. So that first administration will be this June, is that correct?
Yeah, so we're very much excited about the alignment of those because I think there is that commonality, which I'm confident with our student success on the English regions, that we'll see that translates into similar success on the U.S. history, for sure.
Thank you. Ms. Messier, you have any questions or comments?
Thank you both for this presentation. I don't have any specific questions about the high school presentation in particular, but now that we've heard about our students' progress at the elementary, middle, and middle levels as well as the high school, I do have some overarching questions that I'd like to ask. The first three are going to require some participation. The fourth is rhetorical, and the fifth is meant more for reflection. So, how many of you think that you could complete a marathon? I'll preface, you can move through the miles however you want. You can run, walk, skip, crawl, whatever you want, at whatever pace you want. I'd like you to raise your hand if you think that you could complete a marathon. Crawling? Any way you want. You could walk. Okay, about half of you. Now, what if I told you that you had to run the entire marathon, but your pace doesn't matter? How many of you still think you could complete that marathon? One person. Right, now what if I told you that you not only need to run the entire marathon, but that you need to maintain a 7-minute mile pace for the entire 26.2 miles? How many of you still think you can complete the marathon? No one. Do we all notice what just happened? Every time I put a new condition on how you had to complete the marathon, more and more of you dropped out of the 26.2 miles. By dictating the way in which you had to complete the race, I prevented all of you from approaching the starting line. Your potential was crushed by a predetermined path and pace. And in my opinion, I think the school district is doing the same thing to many of its students. And I want to just unpack that a little bit. Just as I gave you one option, running, to complete the marathon, this district offers students one option to complete their coursework in both English and social studies. In 9th and 10th grade, all English and social studies classes are labeled advanced. In 11th and 12th grade, they are labeled IB. While students can register for Regents courses in both 11th and 12th grade, these courses are co-seated with students who have elected to take the IB curriculum. I teach social studies. I have taught social studies for the past 20 years. We do not co-seat AP and Regents classes. Even though the classes have similar curricular bases, the cognitive load the courses carry are very different. Having one option is hurting kids, and in my opinion, it really shouldn't be acceptable. Just as I told you that you had to maintain a 7-minute mile pace for the entire marathon, this district also dictates the pace at which students will move through their secondary education. In math and science, all students start high school classes in the middle school. We compact curriculum in grades 6 and 7, speeding up the pace at which students must learn key concepts that build the foundation for both high school and college coursework. In determining this pace, no emphasis is placed on students' prior performance. No one's asking, is this student ready for this? Instead, all students are pushed ahead and provided Band-Aids, support classes, AIS, extra help, TLC, homework helpers when they stumble. Parents who can afford to hire expensive tutors. Predetermining pace is hurting kids. Mandating one pace is not acceptable. While I appreciate the time and effort that went into this and every other presentation we have seen over the past month, we all know that data can be presented to tell whatever story we want it to. Over the past 3 meetings, data has been used to tell the community that we're doing well, we're above average. And I'm glad that we're above average. Unfortunately, above average is not this district's potential, and potential is a terrible thing to waste. Data has been used to show the community that students are taking higher level classes. Unfortunately, the majority of students are not taking advantage of the one main opportunity that our accelerated framework offers, time to take these higher level classes. As we saw last year, only 22% of the junior class took the physics regents. Last year, only 33% of the senior class took calculus. Last year, only 36% of graduates earned the IB diploma. I do wonder if we gave students more time to develop at their own pace and then designed on-ramps to these higher level classes in the 11th and 12th grades, if those percentages would be higher. I think they would. Data has been used to prove that enrolling in more rigorous classes improves student outcomes. Unfortunately, equal opportunity is not producing equal outcomes in the Rockville Center School District. The opportunity gap, the gap that Accelerated for All, Advanced for All, IB for All was designed to close, is wider than ever. Last year, only 65.2% of our economically disadvantaged students passed the Algebra 1 Regents, compared to 95.7% of their advantaged peers. It's a 30-point difference. This gap was wider for geometry and Algebra 2, and even wider still across all 3 math courses when comparing students who are classified with a disability to their non-disabled peers. This opportunity gap exists across the sciences. It exists between diploma designations. This gap is not new, and it is not a byproduct of COVID. So my 5th and final question: what is this administration going to do differently to ensure that all students are afforded an appropriate education so that they can all reach their respective potentials? Potential is a key word in our mission statement. I want to know how we plan to answer those parents and caregivers who come to this microphone, who have written us emails, who stop us on the playground, in the food store, on the sidewalk, who call us, who text us, who have advocated for all children by sharing their personal stories. Stories of pure struggle, stories of injustice, stories that have been absolutely heartbreaking for many reasons, but most importantly, because they were avoidable. The system that this school district invented 2 decades ago has failed too many students. The next chapter of this school district's stories is yours to write, and I sincerely hope that you will decide to change the plot. Thank you.
Mrs. Farazani?
Is this on? She's a hard act to follow. I appreciate very much the presentations that have been going on over the past few weeks, and I'm sorry I wasn't here last week. I had a family emergency, but I did have something that I wanted to comment on. One of the most positive changes to our district this year has been a focus on collaboration, fostered by our new superintendent. And just as some of our students have morphed his 2 names into 1 name, Matt Gavin, he has linked together our already amazing team with the new team members, allowing unprecedented brainstorming and partnership, resulting in some new exciting developments. And I want to thank all of our administrators and our principals and our staff members who have presented data to us over these past weeks. Introspection is never easy, especially when the results are presented in a public forum. But collaboration allows people with different strengths and opinions and talents and viewpoints to take on challenges in an inclusive and innovative manner. The past 2 years have presented our school community with many challenges. And in the spirit of collaboration, my comments this evening, after listening to all the presentations, are made through my lens. I am not an educator, but I am an attorney. And attorneys, as counselors and advocates, must be good listeners. And for 12 years, I've been a volunteer at every level of our district schools, and I've been listening. The faces and the names have changed over time, but the message has remained the same. The stories are anecdotal evidence, data, from those who have experience as students, parents, and teachers in our district. And I'm going to use a very simplistic example to illustrate what I believe are some of our resounding themes that I've repeatedly heard about our Accelerated for All model. Imagine taking a child that has limited use of his or her limbs and tossing that child into the middle of a very deep pool. Well-intended people stand outside the pool, shouting positive words of encouragement. You can do it, just keep trying. You have it within you. And when that doesn't work, people get into the pool, roll up their sleeves, flank the child, supporting the child until the child reaches the edge of the pool. Despite the encouragement, the unending support that carried the child the distance of the pool, the child is still not a swimmer. And more importantly, there's an unintended consequence. The child feels the encouragement, the support, the love, and internalizes it. The child is self-aware. The child knows deep down he or she has done everything within their power to reach the expectation of the supporters, but has failed. The child, despite every effort, feels that he or she has let everyone down. The child feels deflated, guilty, less than, and dreads the next day when the process will be repeated again. Every child has a different strength and struggle. A child may not be emotionally, developmentally, or socially ready at a particular time to learn a certain concept or skill. This is true for all our students. Many of the anecdotes recounting student experiences of attending extra help before school, being pulled out of missing electives for academic support,
missing after-school activities, attending tutoring sessions, summer school, and still failing were pre-pandemic stories. The pre-pandemic toll on mental health was repeatedly voiced. All schools have felt the effects of the pandemic in learning loss and an increased strain on the mental health of students. The data presented in the elementary and middle school presentations are indicative of 2 years of interrupted instruction, especially in our 4th and 5th grades. Those students' last regular educational experience was 2nd and 3rd grade. Parents have written, they've called, they've come to the microphone at meetings, and they've told their children stories about the personal cost of Accelerated for All at the middle school and the high school level. What better time to add in options for non-accelerated grade-level curriculums that many in our community have been advocating for long before the pandemic than now, when there's additional loss of learning, placing our students even further behind. There comes a point where so much is missing that no amount of remediation or support can fill in the cracks of our crumbling foundation. We need to stop throwing our kids into the middle of the pool. We need to meet them where they are at any given time in their individual development, strengthen their figurative limbs, and allow them not only to learn to swim on their own, but to enjoy their time in the pool. That's all.
Mrs. Hackett?
I'd like to thank our administrators for their data presentation, and I think you owed an apology, to be honest with you. I'm sorry that this has become a higher level conversation, because I thought that we were going to be talking about tonight's presentation and questions should be directed to you, so I apologize if you've been put in an uncomfortable situation. I do appreciate all of the information. This is chock full of data. People have been asking for data. You delivered it times 10, and I really do appreciate that, so thank you. And I would like to congratulate you on, honestly, again, people are looking for data. We can't ignore the data. So the outcomes that we're seeing are telling different stories for different people, and I think overall our students are being afforded equity and they're being afforded access, and I think that that's something that is very prominent and important to people in this community. I think we can't ignore the fact that we want rankings and we want real estate values and we want to end up on all these great lists and wonderful things, and we don't want to do that at the cost of anybody, but at the same time, we're doing all the things we can to offer as much as we can to our students and give as much equity and access, and I do appreciate that from this district because I think it is what makes Rockville Center special. Ms. Nisler-Cross, you talked about how other districts and globally are putting up gates. That's a danger to our students. It naturally tracks them, and we're a district that doesn't believe in tracking. So I just want to thank you for finding ways to offer as many choices as we can and pivoting and editing what we have to do along the way to make sure that every kid is touched, because I think that that is how we can really culminate what our success is here, and I think we do have that. So I echo what I said last week about the middle school being a great place. The high school is a great place, too. I say that with a board member lens, not a parent lens. I've been watching the high school for years before I stepped foot in here as a parent. You guys do wonderful work. Our teachers are amazing. The students are feeling really good about what they're doing here, so I start with gratitude and thank you. I did have a couple of questions related to the actual presentation. I know we couldn't provide data on the 11R history because we haven't been taking the Regents, but I was curious if the enrollment levels mirror what the English are. Are they growing? Are they dwindling? Do we have a lot of students opting for 11R social studies or not? I just was interested to know how that was, comparatively.
Yeah, we had chosen English 11 as the focus for obvious reasons because we had a Regents exam that was geared for that. I don't want to misspeak and give you inaccurate data, so I can certainly circle back, but historically, those students who opt for the English 11R will choose a similar pathway for history. But I can certainly double check just to make sure I give you the right info, but that is historically the path.
All right, thank you. We had not been able to revisit this because so many things had changed. As you said, we launched the programs, then COVID happened. We didn't have a lot of data, but at least the enrollment data I think would be helpful. I'm just interested to know how many students are partaking in that.
Absolutely.
One of the other questions I'd asked the middle school, and I would like to know the same for the high school, you offer 0 period help, you offer the homework helpers up until 4 p.m. Is that a system that's being underutilized, utilized on par, overutilized? Are students able to access that easily and get what they're looking for during those periods?
Yes, I would say absolutely. So I've been up at the Homework Helpers program probably half a dozen times this year, and we have anywhere from on any given day 10 to 15, sometimes 20, depending on the day, for students participating. And it's one of those where kids can come and go. They can come and get what they need, and then they can leave. Or we have some students that are staying right till 4 o'clock, which is great. And again, zero period. Now that we've been able to get that back in action, after a brief pause with COVID and distancing, we have students attending zero period. Oftentimes, most commonly right before a test, of course. Although we encourage our kids to try to go there, plenty of times. But kids certainly are taking advantage of those options in a positive way.
Do you think that they're, would parents feel that they're, we've heard this before, that there's too many people showing up, they're not getting, do you feel like the amount of people that are showing up fits what they're able to accomplish, or like the goals?
Yes, absolutely. I think teachers will come to us when there are moments where they feel like they don't have enough space, or there's been too many kids coming to zero period. We have not had that. Walking through, it seems like every kid that wants access to zero period has been able to get it.
Okay, great. And just from your perspective as a high school principal or any of the administrators there, can you just talk what your kind of opinion would be about an unintended consequence of changing around the 8th grade scheduling and what kids are taking in 8th grade and entering high school with, and what cascading effect that might have on choices for high school students going forward?
Yeah, certainly. I think any kind of change that you put in regards to that will cause effects down the road. And I think one of the numbers we highlighted was the Advanced Regions Diploma rate that we're so proud of. And when we start creating different tracks and different lanes for students, do I have a worry that potentially those students won't continue on and see that same success that they had when they were integrated into those heterogeneous classrooms? Yes, I think that's a possibility. And a cause for concern. I also worry that students aren't, when they're grouped like that, potentially aren't having access to collaboration with their peers and are grouped into a setting where they don't have an opportunity to interact with the whole student body.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I'm concerned about that as well. I do think that listening is an important component. I think that you have listened to your students. I think you have made accommodations and changed things along the way, and I think you've always been open to saying, what can we do better and how can we do it? So again, thank you for that, and thank you for your presentation. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Dr. Downing?
Yes, thank you for this comprehensive report on the student data, and it is certainly data that board members have been asking for, and it tells a story of where our instructional plans are succeeding and where they need work, right? It's a cycle of continuous improvement, as we have talked about in terms of curriculum review. It is the job of every school district to challenge students appropriately and to open up opportunities for students, make sure that they're supported. And I think that whenever we look at data, as we've all been noting, context matters, right? Some of it's a snapshot, some of it is going to show trends over time, how we compare with our local school districts nearby. And we expect excellence, obviously, in Rockville Centre Schools. When we see areas of improvement that need improvement, we're going to address them. But I think we also want to be careful about looking at data with any kind of confirmation bias, right? So we may think something works or it doesn't work, and we all have opinions. We have opinions, but we need to be open-minded when we look at data and to make sure that we're not just seeing what we want to see, right? That we're actually seeing quantifiable information. So a couple of specific questions. When you mentioned the co-seated model, as I wrote down what you said, it's a truly integrated classroom. So students in that co-seated class don't necessarily know. They're not segregated by whether they're a Regents student or an IB student. They wouldn't necessarily know their classmates' entry point.
That's correct, yes.
Okay, and when you mentioned the 5-year self-study that comes up for the IB, are you expecting any changes? Will there be a closer look at the new, somewhat new 2-year math sequence that I remember was begun in 2019?
Yeah.
You anticipating any changes to?
I'm going to ask Ms. Nisler to talk about that.
Okay.
That question.
So part of the 5-year self-study is talking with teachers, talking with administration, talking with students, talking with stakeholders to get a sense of, where did they think we're effective, where are we developing, And so from that information, we start to gain insights, and then we put, different action plans in place. So it's really going to be a process of communicating with one another to figure out, where do we think there's definitely room for improvement. For instance, the IB diploma research class, that was something that comes up prominently within, from our last 5-year review, something that we had our eye on. So that's basically the plan, to have those conversations and see what our next steps are going to be.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Walsh, I was also thinking as I was looking at the slides that illustrated mastery, right? I wonder, I don't know exactly how to phrase this, but is there something like the inverse of mastery, right? Are there score bands of our students who are just barely passing, right? We know the students we can say, a certain percent are passing, and we can say a certain percent are passing with mastery. Can we identify either recently or over time any data that would be illustrative of more students are struggling and just barely passing now versus 10 years ago? Or is that something we could even compare over time?
Yeah, so I went back and looked specifically at the English, because that was the topic that we had for this presentation ready. So just bear with me one moment. So I went back and looked just to see a breakdown of, the level of failure, if you will, right? What students actually earned. So last year, we had 3 students who failed the English Regents with a 50, a 56, and a 58. Those were the 3 students who failed. Went back 5 years and then went back 10 years. 5 years ago, we had 8 students fail with varying scores, 18, 32, 39, 39, 55, 55, 57, 57. And then 10 years ago, 7 students failed with low scores, 19, 35, 44, 51, 55, 60, 60. So yes, is there do we look at how close a student is to see how close they are and see how, what supports we can put in place to get them over that edge? Yes, and then, being where our students were with that particular exam, we saw how close that they actually were, especially with the special appeal that was granted last year through New York State. Students who scored above a 50 were given credit for the course as a result. So the level at which a student fails is certainly something we look at to try to see what we need to do to help those kids move forward.
But it's been fairly consistent in your research.
Mm-hmm.
One other thing that I'm thinking about as you were presenting, and I don't know if this is more of a comment than a question, but feel free to comment as well. I'm thinking about anxieties of students, right? Social emotional learning, all of the concerns that we hear. How much, and again, I'm going to struggle to say this correctly, but there are grades, right? Students get grades. There is data. There's also learning. And learning and grades are not identical. They're not the same thing, right? There's a relationship between learning and between the grades that students get. How can we, and maybe this gets to what Dr. Hood is going to participate in at the state level, and maybe it's a conversation we need to have here at either a board meeting sometime in 2023 or a PTA presentation or something where we can sort of look at the philosophy and strategies that we can use as parents at home to explain to our students, right, to our children, that you are not your grades, right? Grades are important, and yes, we're always going to have grades at every level of your education, but how can we understand what grades are and what grades aren't, right? Grades are a snapshot. Have you mastered this particular set of skills on this test? But grades are not who you are. Grades also measure, how much sleep did you get the night before? How good was your breakfast that day? There are many things that grades and scores measure, but there are so many more that grades don't measure. And I want to make sure that kids and our students see the difference between learning and grades. Because in my mind, when I'm thinking about what causes anxiety in our students, is the learning causing anxiety or are the grades causing anxiety? The technology is great. I love to be able to see that students, grades go in on Power Schools, and I can check it at any moment. Do I need to check it at any moment, right? Do I need to, bombard my student when he comes home and say, what are you missing? What's happening here? And how can we all sort of get on the same page in terms of, and it's an unanswerable question, but I'm thinking about how
we as a district and as a community that supports our students can really make sure that we all understand the difference between learning and grades and how anxiety is part of it. But if we can support each other and get on a productive path, that would be, I think, really useful use of our time.
Yeah, and I'm glad you're bringing that point up, because kids are such more than just a test score, without question. And the concept of loving learning and being it sounds cliche, but a lifelong learner is so important. And what we want kids to do when they leave here is to be more curious about learning than when they started, so that when they're heading on to their next path, they're ready to go and they have the skills to tackle and achieve whatever it is that they want to achieve. We've already started to have some of those conversations within our departments. Like social studies has already started to move towards, we'll say, can we do more than just regular tests? Can we do portfolio-based assessments to have kids show their learning in a different way, not just on a multiple choice exam, for example. So, and that's, I think, part of the premise of what makes the IB program great as well, too. There's so many different ways kids can demonstrate that they've learned, right? It's not just about taking an exam. There are many different avenues for which kids can demonstrate their learning. And we've had these conversations with various departments about how can we provide ways for kids to show us that they understand the material that's maybe in a non-traditional way. So I think that's certainly a topic worth continuing to explore, and we look forward to doing so.
Yeah, and we see it in the video, right? The kids love the experiential learning. They love the hands-on learning. They really want to show us what they know. They don't, no one wants to get caught at what you don't know. And, the idea that we can, I saw your hand up. I'll stop talking.
No. It wasn't to stop. It was more of to follow up what you said. At Challenge Day today, and one of the things they asked everyone to do was talk about in a small group, what are your goals for yourself? So it kind of comes back and hits to what you were talking about. So I was in a small group with students, and we talked about, I turned around and said, okay, guys, what are your goals? Every one of the kids in that group talked about, I want to get good grades. They didn't say one word about what they wanted to learn. I think part of it was we are dealing with 8th graders, and if the first one says an answer that seems to be acceptable, there might be a couple more that say, okay, I'm going to roll with that. But when I asked a couple of them afterwards, when we had an off chance, like, what do you mean by grades? Do you mean what you learned, or do you mean like what's in the report card? And they were like, oh, no, what's in the report card? So there definitely has to be like this idea of uncoupling our grades and our personality, because there's an aspect that goes back to in terms of perfectionism that's very negative. And it can be very negative in a highly competitive high school, middle school, elementary school. And so it's definitely something we have to talk about, and I think we have to talk about it in terms of how do we define success here. And it's a larger conversation to have with the board and with the community as a whole.
Yeah, and inspiring these internal, like an intrinsic love of learning, right? Not just an external measure of a particular skill.
That's right.
So, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Since we've hired Mr. Gavin, he's made it a point that he's very process-oriented, and these data review presentations are important steps in that process that he's laid out for us and the community. So thank you for this thoughtful and intentional presentation. Really, a lot of work went into it, it's clear, and I really appreciate you and your team being here. Ms. Nisler, thank you as well, and Mr. Moss, Ms. Green, thank you for being here. Dr. Walsh, in closing, I'm going to ask you the same question that I asked the elementary principals and Ms. McGinn at our last meeting. What can we as a board do to support you in your work moving forward?
I appreciate that. Thank you. So I think just continuing to support when we come up with ideas or programs, as it relates to materials, things that we need for our building to work with us along with central administration to give us the tools that we need to be successful, and that support that we've been given, would love to see continue. So thank you. Also would love the opportunity, as I mentioned just now in Dr. Downing's last comment, we want kids to be successful when they leave here, when they leave us at Southside, and that it doesn't just end in 12th grade. Love the opportunity to come back and explain a little bit more about what our graduates have shown and what we're proud of as they've left us, what they're going on to the next phase with, and how we feel that we've equipped them with good skills to be successful.
That would be great. Thank you so much. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, Mr. Gavin, next presentation.
Yes, we have another one. This night never ends. We have a lot of stuff going on. So, Ms. Love, would you come up and please talk a little bit about some of the new programs or some of the changes in programs that we're anticipating on the 6-12 level for special education?
Okay. I just need 1 second here. Good evening. So it's been a very exciting fall. It's been wonderful to work with my peers on this presentation tonight on our secondary special education programming. And you know, special education, it's so much fun to be creative. I always say we live in the gray. It's never a black and white process, and the fun in helping kids is finding that gray area and coming up with solutions that help bring children to the next level. And I think every year, for as long as we do this, we look at the year prior input that we've gotten from CSE and ask ourselves, you know, what can we do better? And so it's a mystery that we never get to the end of for as long as we have the privilege to do this for a living. So just to talk a little bit before I get into the presentation, I think that's the third slide, so we might want to just go back to the first one. There we go. Before I describe our new programming, I just want to talk a little bit about how this came to be so that we're all on the same page and we understand why we're making these recommendations tonight. So special education programming is built on the framework that's the regulations, the Part 200 regulations for special education. And therein lists all of the approved programs and services that we can utilize when we build the supports for our district. We develop programs based on a multitude of factors and use the regs as our guide. And that's what it is. It's a guide. It's a framework. Cohort to cohort, grades K through age 21, we ebb and flow using these regulatory options that are at our fingertips to meet the needs of the students who sit in our classrooms. Last year, when I first came to Rockville Center, we met as a team and we looked at in particular, our elementary programming. And that led to the expansion of the ICT model to a full-day model, as you know. With regard to secondary, you know, it was interesting because we made this change in elementary, and I always worried, like, you know, does secondary realize, the secondary parents or parents of secondary children know that we are looking at secondary also? It's just that secondary is a lot more complex. There's more moving parts. And when you make one adjustment or one tweak, it tends to impact many other things. So you have to do it with caution and with a little bit more data and time than you might with some of the elementary programming. So I'll say that last year we were meeting. I have to thank Sheila McGinn at the middle school and her team, and of course at that time, Mr. Murphy, for meeting with me last year and his team at the high school to look at the secondary programming, and then this year as well, Ms. McGinn again, and of course, Dr. Walsh, who we heard from this evening, and the team at the high school. We met weekly for several hours every week looking at the secondary programming and trying to assess the things that we thought were working beautifully and then maybe some areas that we wanted to work on. Some of the things that we considered, again, just so you know when I get to our goals. We looked at our student profiles. We looked at IEP goals and attainment of IEP goals, the number of IEP goals on IEPs, and the level and the depth of needs that students had. We looked at how many students moved to more restrictive settings, how many students moved to less restrictive settings, how many students were declassified. We met with our staff and faculty. We got input from them on their experiences working with our students. We met with our parents, with SEP regularly to get parent input on their experiences, and also parents that may not be as active in SEP but are CSE members and communicate their experience and their journey with us when we meet with them during CSE. And we looked at these patterns, and then of course our scheduling, because with the scheduling and the master schedule and considering where we might like to go, how we would build a schedule to support all of this and of course all of the general education needs is a very big part of the conversation. So our job is to first and foremost develop programs that take all of this into consideration and support learning and ensure that our students have a successful, smooth journey. So with all of that said, that is how we came to identify the following goals on this slide. So when we looked at our secondary special education programming, and again, this is grades 6th through 12th grade for students who we expect to leave us after 12th grade, but then also grades 6 through, for our alternate assessed students, they may stay with us through age 21. So we're considering that gap of students entering 6th grade until they leave here, whether it be as seniors or whether they stay to age 21. And some of the goals that we came up with were to maximize our teacher-to-student contact. And what that means is that we looked at the staffing that we had in both buildings, and we asked ourselves, based on the scheduling and the programs and the type of programs that we have, are we using our incredible teachers, and we do have an incredible faculty, are we using them as effectively as we can? So we know they're doing a really great job. We know our students are doing well. But based on the number of teachers we have, periods in the day, and the way our programming was configured, were we using them as efficiently as we could? And we decided that we could actually utilize them if we changed our programming a little bit, and we would have more teacher-to-student time. So that became one goal. And of course, more teacher-to-student time means more support for our students. We wanted to increase the use of co-teaching models. So we know there are 6 co-teaching models that we utilize within that program. And based on the configuration of the program that we have, we do see the models of co-teaching. However, if the model was developed a little bit further and we did PD with our staff, both general ed and special ed, we would really be a way to maximize the utilization of those co-teaching models and, again, positively impact student learning. The third item is something that came up from really everyone, staff, students, and parents, and that was an opportunity for our classified students along their journey starting from middle school on to participate in electives. And I know we've heard that many times, that students have several support classes at times, and it leaves no room in their schedule. So let's say, for example, we have an integrated co-teaching student, and they have multiple support classes. They don't have room to take an elective. And I think, for all the obvious reasons that we know, students enjoy electives. Electives help students find their pathway for later on in life, where maybe certain academics might be difficult for them, but perhaps they're an artist, and will they really be able to travel that journey as an artist if they're not able to take the electives that they want through music and arts? So in looking at this and all of the other things I've mentioned, so now we're looking at bolstering the student-to-teacher time, utilizing the co-teaching models, and ensuring that students have an opportunity in their secondary education to have electives and participate in that very joyous time. And we have so many wonderful electives here in Rockville Center to ensure that they have an opportunity to do that. And that would include, mandated elective like health, or an elective such as art or music or coding or whatever the case may be. Preserving the least restrictive environment. So in this case, again, if we're running programs that are truly supportive and we're maximizing student learning, and students are able, the program's able to meet the needs of the student and help them achieve their IEP goals by the end of the year, then we would say we're satisfied with the program for that student, that student fits the profile of the program, we can meet their needs, we can meet the IEP goals within the program that we have. If a program is not meeting the needs of a student, they can move to a more restrictive program. And we don't want to see that. We really want to be able to support students in their least restrictive environment. So if you're truly a special class student, that's wonderful. We have a program for you. But if you're truly an integrated co-teaching student and you just need a little bit more support within integrated co-teaching, you should be able to stay there. Our goal would be to meet your needs within that program. And that was part of the conversation too, like preserving least restrictive environments for students. Based on the way we developed the master schedule, we're also looking at case management. Case management means that for every student with an IEP, an individual education plan, classified student, they have a special education teacher assigned to them as their case manager. And typically we consider the building psychologist as case manager by default. if the master schedule is developed in such a way that you have enough contact time with your student, by the nature of that, you're able to case manage them easier. You have more information about the student on an ongoing basis. And again, it gives you more contact time with the student. So again, that was something that we felt would help our students who were classified. And part of this program development was really looking at how can we match teachers within our programs? How can we have them have a cohort of students together? And so that we're both working, like say, potentially in an integrated co-teaching class program. Maybe I have a group of students, another teacher has a group of students for another subject. We share the students for skills, and we case manage those students. There's a lot of levels of support here that I'm talking about. And it's for more than one program than integrated co-teaching, but I just happened to be mentioning that one. So again, we want to give our teachers the opportunity to really maximize the time with their students as case managers. And then, of course, there's alignment. So as students travel through our programs, we want students to go from grades 5 to 6, and parents understanding how the programs break off, why they break off the way they do, and how one program feeds into the other, and then train our teachers as well, really understanding the programs at elementary, the programs at middle, the programs at high school, and that we have the opportunity to continue. If students are on a trajectory that's working for them, they still have access to that as they move forward. And so we're looking to align the programs. It's important to note, also with special ed, that it's based on enrollment. So where we want to, we're developing this the way we are, it's always subject to the students that we have that are enrolled here. So a good example would be our special class program at Hewitt. So that's an 812 special class program. So there can be up to 8 students, a teacher, and 2 additional adults in the room. When that program last year happened to have 2 sections of students. We had a group of students move to the middle school. There's only 1 section at Hewitt right now. But that's okay, because it's all based on enrollment. We happen to have students who are in preschool that we've already identified that would likely make a class and another cohort coming in. But it's all based on the cohorts of students coming in, what their needs are, looking at the regulations, making sure our programs are aligned, and hopefully, number one, educating as many students as we can in district, but also having a continuum of programs for our students. So that's where we came up with our goals. And again, I have to thank the middle and the high school principals and admin team for working with me on this. Took many, many hours of analyzing information, but I do think we came up with a great plan. So with that said, the programs that we'll be offering for grades 6 through 12, the major change will be an integrated co-teaching. So currently that model is an alternating day model. So the special education teacher is in the class with the general education teacher for all content areas. They're in the class every other day. So we're going to use, what's interesting is we're using the same staff that we have, but based on the magical scheduling that we're doing, we're going to utilize the same teachers that we have, but have them in the class every day. So, and then we're looking to match, there's something called the skills class. It's a class that often is married to the integrated co-teaching courses, and that is taught by the special ed teacher. So for example, if I'm teaching, let's just say math and science, and my partner is teaching English and social studies, we are going to be with our kids every single day instead of every other day. We're going to have the same students, and then in our skills class, we will have just the classified students from the integrated co-teaching classes that we have throughout the day, and we're going to get time with them for one period. And what's great about that is that we're in the class every day seeing the students learn. So now I'm with you every day. I can see if you're having a difficult time or not, if you need reteaching, if you need pre-teaching, if you need differentiation. And as colleagues, we're with that group of students all day, and then we can work with them in skills. So the model itself will provide twice as much. It's a 100% increase in support for our students, But what's also wonderful is that the skills class is very purposeful, and the students in the class, again, are connected. There wouldn't be other students in our skills class, let's say, that might have integrated co-teaching with another teacher. So they're our students, and we're with them at that time. So all that is very beneficial, but what also comes from that is that students, the anticipation would be that students won't need support classes on top of that. So now it opens up the schedule for students to take electives. And that's all part of that program development and creating the master schedule to support that. And at the middle school, it's going to be departmentalized in a very similar fashion. The model I just spoke about is what we're looking to do at the high school. At the middle school, it's going to be very similar, where it's departmentalized. And again, the special ed teachers have skills at the same time working with the students on whatever it is that they need, their IEP goals as well, but then that will open the schedule for all of those kids to get electives, which is something that has been a challenge in the past. So that's the main development with integrated co-teaching. That's for all courses that offer integrated co-teaching connected to it grades 6 through 12. For a special class, we have our 12-1-1 program, which is generally assessed, and then our 12-1-2 program, which is our alternately assessed class. And that will run grades 6 through 12 for our generally assessed, and age range 6th grade through age 21 for our alternately assessed students. We just made this split at the middle school very late in the year last year because we identified a group of students that were in the alternately assessed class that we felt could be generally assessed, and also because we know that the superintendent determination option for a local diploma is available specifically for students who fit that profile, where if they pass their coursework and we provide them with vocational education, these are students who otherwise wouldn't have earned a diploma who will now earn a high school diploma because we broke that class apart. And what's great about it is if you're truly a student who needs adaptive daily living skills or life skills, as it's more commonly known, we're really able to focus in on that and hone in on that with the students who are in the alternately assessed class and really give them a lot of support, and academics, of course, but it's through the alternate assessment standards. And then the students who are in the generally assessed program have the benefit of modification, differentiation, exposure, and rigor. They also will get an adaptive daily living component of their day in the middle school, and at the high school they'll get vocational education. They'll get a component of that, which will yield them a diploma. And at the least, and there'll be some students in that program that may get a Regents or an Advanced Regents diploma, but at the very least we know that we have identified a group of students who would otherwise have left us without one, who really do qualify to be in that class. So those are our two special class 12 programs. And again, that's 12 students, 1 teacher, and 1 additional adult, or 2 additional adults with the 12-1-2. And then currently at the middle school, the section I mentioned that moved up to the middle school from our Hewitt program is doing beautifully. And that program is an 8-1-2 program. Again, 8 students, 1 teacher, and 2 adults in that program. And that's running at the middle school. It's not running at the high school right now because currently we don't have any students who require it. But again, any of the programs that are in the Part 200 regulations, we can run based on enrollment. And this just happens to be at this time at the middle school. And then we have resource room, which again is up to 5 students to 1 teacher, 1 time a day, 1 period a day, every day of the week. And that's our programming for the middle and the high school. Again, I put program subject to change based on enrollment because you never know if we have cohorts, people moving in or out, or more students classified. You never know, we might add a program. But at this point, this is what we're preparing for CSE. Okay. The next change or a little upgrade that we made for next year, which is exciting to us. And Again, I have to thank Dr. Walsh for working on this with me many, many, many days. We looked at our math continuum for our special class students. So this is the 12-1-1 class. This is our special class program of students who are generally assessed. They're working towards a Regents diploma. And we were looking at the coursework they were taking, and I think that our concern was that some of the students were finishing in 10th grade with their math options. And so we thought it would be really great to mirror the experience that the students have in general education math courses. So we added some courses to the continuum. So in grade 9, the students will take algebra. That's what they're currently doing. In grade 10, they will take concepts of geometry. At this time, geometry is not part of the continuum for this particular program. So when we say concepts of geometry, we want to make sure that we're exposing students to geometry. If we have a student who we think would sit for the Regents, the beauty of special class is that it is a small class and you can differentiate for student needs. We have extra adults in the class. So if we have students who are interested in taking the Regents, we would never hold them back, but by design, it's for exposure so that students learn concepts of geometry and we make sure that they have exposure to that math topic. In grade 11, they'll take concepts of algebra, same type of philosophy behind that. We want students to have the same rigor and exposure that they have in general education and that they're exposed to these concepts. If a student can sit for the Algebra 2 Regents, that's wonderful. We'll support them with that and prepare them, but at the very least, they'll have conceptual exposure to Algebra 2. And then in grade 12, we're looking at a 0.5 business math. So the first half of the year, they'll take business math, and then the second half of the year is a pre-college math, each worth a half credit. And what's good about this, too, is that many of our students, depending on their vocational education program, they may or may not get a math credit with that, and they may or may not need a math credit. So now we know that we can customize the schedule to include a math course through 12th grade and have their vocation program start after that. So if they stay through fifth period, then they can leave fifth period for voc ed and get everything that they need. So they're getting all of their academics, they can get their math course if it's not offered through their program, and then they can go for their voc ed training. And so then they're getting everything that they need, and when they leave us, they're prepared too for if they need to take a college entrance exam or whatever the case may be, they've had exposure in math until they leave us. And that's that slide. Okay. And then our last slide. So this is something we've been looking at grades K through 12. And it's our community outings, vocational education, and adaptive daily living. And what this is really to align and improve the experiences that prepare our students for a productive and independent life. And I stress independence. And so we're looking at students, so this would be the example I would give you. Students we're talking about, let's say, an adult, we'd like to make dinner. So to make dinner, what are the things we need to do, right? We need to look up a recipe, make a list of items we need to buy in the store, have a budget in mind, make that plan before we go to the store. How are we getting to the store? What's our transportation? Getting the items, paying for the items, making sure that we have enough money to pay for whatever it is that we need, getting our change, all of that, getting home safely, and then unpacking, preparing the food, knowing that we don't leave cold items out on the counter, all the little things that seem, so automatic for many of us that we really need to work with our students on. So making sure the groceries get put away, and that when the time comes, how do we safely prepare food for a meal? Sounds like a simple task, but for our students with special needs, it takes time to be able to do that independently. And our goal is that when they leave us, they are ready to do it independently, but it takes time over time to get to that point. So maybe at the elementary level, we're going shopping with our teachers. You know, we're identifying what we'd like to make, we make a grocery list, and we go shopping. Maybe in the intermediate grades, we start working more with how much money do we need, making a budget, and paying for the items at the store. In middle school, we start incorporating travel training and how to plan getting from A to B, how long it takes, how do we arrange for transportation, all of that. And then by the high school, we want to put it all together and be able to see students taking it from start to finish, that example I gave you, so that when they leave us, they're now independent. And the amount of help that they get along the way, we want to decrease and give students more to do on their own. So I'm working with our special class teachers. Right now, they're all piloting this program, grades K through 8. They are working on identifying the areas that we need to work on with our students, the types of travel training that would work in this community, because again, we want to prepare our students for life in Rockville Center, that when they leave here, they're familiar with their surroundings, where they can go for all the things that they need and how to get there. And over the summer, we're going to work on a curriculum writing project, grades K through 12, that really lay out from one age range to the next developmentally, what are we doing with the students and how are they becoming more independent. So that's the project we're working on right now. The teachers have been amazing in working with me on this, and they're so excited about it, to be able to have these experiences with their students, taking them out into the community, taking them out for lunch, going to the library, going to the dentist, going to the shopping, all of these things that we're talking about, which they've done in the past, but it's more organizing it so that we see true growth developmentally and independence. So that's one thing that we're working on right now that's very exciting, and that will be more formalized next year. Also, our vocational education program that we have at the high school, we are working with Abilities, which is through the Henry Viscardi School, to help us develop a program for both of our special class programs. So our students who are in our 12-1-2 program, they come to us in 9th grade age, and they stay with us until they're 21. So rather than having them participate in a similar type of program that whole time, we're looking at having 9th and 10th grade students working here at the high school, like school to work, with close supervision because they're younger, with their teachers and staff here in the high school. And then the upperclassmen in ages 18 to 21, we're looking to take them out into 2 different types of vocational adaptive daily living programs. So one would be 11th and 12th grade age, and then the final one would be ages 18 to 21. Again, increasing their experiences and preparing them for life when they leave us. And then that way, the first 2 years, they're here at the high school doing school to work. The next 2 years, they're doing some work out in the community. And then the last 2 to 3 years, we're increasing that with infusing some more independent skills and also working with their parents on their transition services so that when they leave here, they're set up with what they need to be successful. So we're working on all of that and working collaboratively on all of this transition planning together with all of our school buildings, elementary, middle, and high school. And so that is all the changes that we have at this time for special ed. And again, I have to thank everyone at the buildings for working with me on this and putting so much time and effort into it. I feel, just have to recognize again Sheila McGinn and Patrick Walsh for helping me so much this year with this, and it's very exciting. So I don't know if you have any questions.
So a couple things. First, thank you for the work. As a collaborative team, I think we've seen now an alignment in our programming, which makes sense for me. So I'm excited to take that off the ground for next year. The other thing that's important that I heard you say is that for our special class students, we're starting to see now that there's an increase of skill building towards independence. And so that level of being as independent as you possibly can for our life skills classes, I think is really important. So that sequence is often lacking in many districts' programs. So kudos to all of us for thinking about this. Kudos to you for giving us a program and a structure. because that's something that is definitely lacking, particularly your last slide where we talked about community outings, vocational education, and adaptive daily living. That is not something that people often think about on a K-12 or K-21 perspective. So well done. The other piece that I thought was, very creative on the whole team's point of view was you called it magical scheduling to get everyone, to get integrated co-teaching for everyone with no impact on staffing. I call it efficient scheduling. So whatever you want to call it, magic or efficient, I think you guys did a great job. I'm very confident that with a new program in place, we're going to be able to accomplish the goals everyone set out in terms of maximizing student and teacher contact. So well done. And I turn it over to the board for any questions or comments.
Thank you, Ms. Love. These conversations started last year, as you mentioned at the beginning of your presentation, and it's really nice to hear how they came to fruition since then and hearing these concrete action items that you're willing to take or proposing. Really excited for the work that you've done, and thank you, really, for also partnering with our administrative team. You're giving a lot of credit to them, but you've also done a lot of work, so thank you very much. Ms. Messier?
Thank you, Ms. Love, and thank you to your team as well. I think what I appreciate most about this is the process that it seems that you went through to kind of come to these conclusions, that it started with a very thorough analysis of the students who are part of this program and who are going to be served, taking time to talk to their parents to garner a better understanding of their needs, and then also talking with the teachers who are working with these children. And collectively, we're building a better program that's going to better serve kids. I appreciate the fact that we took what was a deeply embedded model for integrated co-teaching, and in a very short turnaround time, I mean, you've been with us for about 1 year and 3 months now, have really transformed K through 12, what integrated co-teaching looks like in this district. And the service that this is going to provide for kids, the support that it will provide for kids, it's really just immeasurable. I also really want to thank you and your team for addressing the math continuum. I know that this is an area that our SEP community has been asking for reform in for years, so we now offer classes to students, algebra, which we've had in 9th grade for that 12-1-2 class, but now integrating the concepts of geometry, algebra, and then those 0.5 level math classes, so we can really keep students engaged in math throughout their 4 years at the high school, which for those who plan to move on to college or vocational school, as you said, are really very important. The only one question I had revolves around this math continuum that's here. We're seeing, so in 9th grade, they're taking the Regents algebra class, hopefully, so that we can get the Regents diploma. And in 10th and 11th grade, they'll take geometry and algebra. And as you said, they have the ability to sit for the Regents. So it's still possible that by starting algebra in grade 9, that students could potentially graduate with that advanced Regents diploma.
Yes.
Okay, because I know that was one of the concerns we had about unintended consequences, is that by holding some students back a year from starting, that might disclude them from finishing the continuum, but the continuum ends in grade 11. So any student really would still be able to get that diploma if they started in grade 9.
Right.
Great, thank you for that clarification, and again, thank you for everything.
Ms. Farazani?
Thank you so much. You stole my comments, so I have nothing to say except thank you. Hearing about the integrated co-teaching model and your vision that you worked so hard with everyone to come to fruition, it's amazing. And now the fact that it's going through all the way up to the high school is something we've been waiting for, and it's very exciting. And again, the math, we've heard that from so many parents, that kids just are done in sophomore year and they need it to go on to college. And so to hear that that's happening in such a short period of time is amazing. So thank you.
Mrs. Hackett?
Thanks. I think the unintended consequence, just going back to that, was more of a concern about not advanced designation, but the lack of choice. As we get forward, we get pushed ahead and we get less choices. I think that was the comment that I made. Just wanted to recircle back. Thank you for the electives. I think that's a huge piece of this. That has been something the parents and the students have really been looking for. So I think that's a huge victory to see our students being able to actually, again, take part in what we do offer. We offer a lot, so that's a huge thing. And I really love the life skills and adaptive living. I think that that's wonderful because we're not just preparing students for college, we're preparing them for life, whichever choice that they make. So I think that that's another great thing. One question I had was about, you talked a little bit about the alignment of the secondary programs, so making the transitions. I know a lot of transitions are specific to the students and their IEPs, so that will happen in CSE. But what can parents expect when they're making those transitions between, 5th grade to 6th grade, and then again from 8th grade to 9th grade, in terms of transitional meetings and exposure to the actual buildings? Because sometimes you don't get a feeling for what the transition's going to look like in a CSE meeting, which might, I know you're doing CSEs in the building, which I love, but without being able to maybe see exactly what the path looks like in that transition, what is offered to students that are entering those buildings.
Sure. And I do think transition for a typical child makes parents nervous. But I do think when you have a child with special needs, it's even more so. And I think here we have the benefit that our parents fall in love with whoever they're with. So I notice in elementary, in 5th grade, they're in love with their elementary building, and they're so nervous to go to the middle school. Then when they get to the middle school, they fall in love with everyone at the middle school, and then they get so nervous about coming to the high school. And so I do think these transitions, because we do have wonderful schools, and because it is, I think, a natural reaction to be so protective of our children, and then if we have a child with special needs, even more so, it's anxiety producing sometimes for parents. So, parents should take heed and know that grades 5th to 6th, that's a collaborative meeting. So we're already meeting now, 5th to 6th and 8th to 9th, and talking about the students who are moving up, and there'll be representation at the meetings for transition year from the receiving building. In addition to having staff at the CSE to talk about, so if you're in 5th grade, there'll be 6th grade staff or the 6th grade psychologist at the meeting to talk and answer any questions that they have. The staff is also meeting to talk about the kids and do articulation meetings so that we really understand all of our students coming from 5th to 6th and then 8th to 9th. And then there are opportunities for the students to also visit the buildings that they're going to and orientation and things like that. But I would say beyond that, exposure that parents have and support, if anyone's feeling nervous or concerned, I would encourage, if anyone knows, parents that convey that to certainly call their building psychologist or my office, because we're all working together. And whoever's having difficulty, whoever's nervous, we're here for you. We'll answer your questions. We'll help you see whatever it is that you need to see. Obviously, we can't have parents in classrooms with children, but can we give parents a tour of a building? Can we have them meet with staff even beyond what we have set up? We can do that. But just for typical practice, that's how it would go. There's representation at these transition meetings from both buildings, and there's articulation meetings between staff, between administration, the building principals, and then also myself. And so we definitely are working together and communicating this to the parent at the CSE meeting. And then there's the orientations.
Thank
so
you.
That's
Thank you
what
so
we
much.
do. Yeah.
Dr. Downey?
Thank you. On that note of transitions being anxiety-producing and opportunities for growth, since you rolled out ICT in the elementary schools just this year, I imagine there have been lessons learned that will enable this transition into 612 ICT to run even more smoothly.
Well, I have to say, well-planned is a very good thing. And I think this time last year, we were talking about our elementary program change, and we planned it very well. We had such dedication from our principals and our staff, our teachers, that it's been a very smooth rollout. And it's really amazing to go into the classes. We're all observing integrated co-teaching classes, and we're seeing wonderful things. And we hear parents saying that their child's journey is more successful and comes with more ease because they have more consistent support throughout the day. So I would say we really learned that planning is very important, training of staff is very important, and making sure that everybody knows what's happening. Because I think by the time it happened, we were all so used to it and well-trained and planning it together that it wasn't like stepping off a ledge. It was like just stepping up onto the ramp. Like the ramp was there and ready to go. And I think that's why we're working the way we are now, because we realize that for secondary, we're going to do a very similar thing. So we've already met with the special education staff, all of the psychologists. We've met with the full faculties in both buildings. And now we'll start training. So we'll start with our special ed teachers first, and then we'll have full faculty training through the spring. And then ultimately, when we know who the teams are, then we'll do more targeted training with them and go from there. And so I think that luckily and happily, it's been a wonderful experience. So I think we can take from that and apply it to secondary. And I think that helps the secondary staff too, because we are getting such wonderful feedback from elementary that you just can't help but want to be a part of something that's been successful for kids.
For sure, right. And so
yeah.
you have an even longer runway in terms of that
Yeah.
timeline than you did this time last year.
Right.
And apologize, because I was not on the board when these discussions started, as they did last year. In terms of just a nuts and bolts kind of question, as I recall, a student could be referred into resource room or academic enrichment. And then I was hearing you talk about the skills class. So is academic enrichment sort of a new, that's not part of this model?
So Resource Room is a program. So it's Resource Room or integrated co-teaching.
Okay.
So Resource Room, the difference is the special ed teacher isn't in all of your content areas with you. You go to them once a day. And it can be no more than 5 students, and that's daily. So that would be a program on your IEP. If you're an integrated co-teaching student, you have a special ed teacher in your core content area class for however many classes we recommended. Could be all.
Okay.
Could be some. And then there's a skills class, which I think it's been called different things, and I think we're probably renaming all of the classes to help people reboot specific what each class is.
Good.
We've also been working on that. And that class is part of the integrated co-teaching, and it's like a support class. And we'll likely call it that or a skills class, and that will be part of integrated co-teaching. So it's different than resource room, 2 different things.
Got it, okay. And it is individualized, so each
Mhm.
student has
Yes.
their own goals that they are
Yes.
working towards on their IEP?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you again.
Okay, thank you so much.
Our high school team should exit stage left.
Thank you very much. Have a
Thank
good
you,
night.
guys.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to policies. We have a series of policies in this section up on stage 1 tonight that haven't been revised since 2002. Council has reviewed, some need no revisions, some have some suggested language changes based on necessary updates. So Ms. Harvey's going to chime in when she has to, right?
You can come up here.
As we go, yeah, okay. So policy 5540, publication of the district's annual financial statement, no revisions needed. Any comments or questions on 5540? Everybody comfortable moving this to stage 2?
Yes.
5550, use of federal funds for political expenditures. Any comments or questions?
Yeah, you're just adding
Just other references
compliance.
that, are
Okay.
there. When a policy is 20 years old, I think, I want to make sure that kind of everyone is aware. I don't think anything that was suggested in here hasn't been being done. It just, the policy wasn't updated.
Right. Correct. Yes, thank you for that clarification. We just want
I
to
don't
make
want
sure
people to think
we're
like-
looking at these
Right.
again.
That are looking at them and saying, wait, what is the school district doing?
Yeah, no.
And
Thank you.
that's common with school districts. Board policies kind of get outdated because you're not looking at them regularly. The actual business office or the curriculum office will be looking at things and making changes when there's changes of law or changes of practice, but just doesn't get put into the policy.
Yeah, thank you. 5610, insurance. Ms. Harvey, there are some suggested revisions to this one. Do you mind just summarizing?
Yeah, and this is really just kind of showing the specific sections with regard to insurance, and it's making clear of the types of the insurance and appropriate, and the board is going to make sure that the appropriate policies are in place.
Thank you. Any comments or questions?
Yeah, imagining this is happening already. We're just
Yeah.
putting it
Okay.
into the policy.
Yep.
Yes.
Case
The
in point.
school district has insurance.
Yes.
Yes,
Case in point.
yes, we do.
I think this, part of the conversation last year, also just to add on, was just going through a methodical review of our
Correct.
manual and just making sure that our practice is matching what's on the books, yeah. 5620, fixed asset inventories, accounting and tracking.
This also, I mean, with dealing with accounting and fixed assets, there's been changes in law in the last 20 years. This is really just bringing it all in. Again, policies were, I have no doubt that the business office followed this all and are not going to be making, severe changes in the next couple of months.
Thank you.
And this policy had very little, it was a very short
Yep,
policy, so
as
there's a lot more
was, right.
detail on it.
My only question about this one was the $5,000 threshold. Was that something we were doing before? So
That was what
that's
we've been
just
doing.
captured in there? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions on 5620?
No.
Right, move that to stage 2.
Yes.
5630, facilities, inspection, operation, and maintenance. There's also some, is this just reflecting updates as well?
Yeah, no, this updates, I did remove out kind of references to the law, in the actual portions of it, and it's at the end. Again, it's just changing to law. There's some things that were added in that, like asbestos hazard, Emergency Response Act, the lead contamination, that was all within the past five-ish years. I
Yep.
think we're actually done with the first.
Lead was like 4 years ago, yep.
Yeah. So those are things, again, the district did everything they need to, it just wasn't put into the policy.
Got it, thank you. Any comments or questions on 5630?
No. Just on the second page, the 5-year capital facilities plan and all the things that will include. So we're just sort of always in the middle of that. We're at some stage of a 5-year plan.
Yes.
So we
Yes.
don't need to be triggered like, oh, in 5 years, we need to do this. We're just always in
Right.
one of
Right.
those years.
We have a 5-year plan with the state. There are certain timeframes each district has to have it done, so it's kind of on a rotating 5-year basis. I think our next full one that we have to do is in 2023,
Okay,
so.
thank you.
And as, that's part of our board goals is to come up with a
Right.
facilities upgrade plan anyway, so that's something we do in context with the budget every year.
Right.
I think we forgot to say 5610, we talked, but we didn't do the final move to stage 2.
Oh, can we move that to stage 2?
Just so it's a box
Yep.
check for
Thank
Mary
you.
Lou. I can see her over there.
Thank you. Stage 3, 7111, release time of students. This is the third read, obviously. Are there any comments or questions on this? Okay, move to approval.
Yeah.
Yes.
7112, student dismissal precautions. Move to approval.
Yes.
7150, school census.
Yes.
That's good.
7161, safe public school choice option to students who are victims of a violent criminal offense.
Yes.
Move to approval.
Yes.
Okay. 7210, student evaluation.
Yes.
Okay, good. 7211, provision of interpreter services to parents who are hearing impaired. Move to approval.
Yes. Yep.
7212, interpreters for non-English speaking parents. Can we move this to approval as well?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Mr. Gavin, we have a gift.
We do. We had a generous gift of a ping pong table for our greenhouse students to provide a new and exciting opportunity for students to do ping pong in their greenhouse setting. And I just do want to update the board that we are in the process of upgrading that facility as we speak. Some of the work is going to happen over the Thanksgiving break. One of the walls has been brought down as per what the kids wanted. They were part of the design of the project. And I think the ping pong table will be a nice addition to what will be a freshly painted room, newly configured rooms, and now some new equipment. So all in all, thank you very much to our benefactor, and thanks to Mr. Van Zant for all his work and helping, really having the kids have a voice in designing the space.
Thank you very much. Can I have a motion to approve the acceptance of the gift?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you again very much. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes as listed on the agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Can I have a motion to approve the financial reports as listed on the agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Can I have a motion to approve receipts of financial reports as listed on the agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Can Can I have a motion to approve board actions A through I as listed on the agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any questions? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone. Our next meeting is December 7th, and that will be a regular meeting. Have a good evening.